I thought I would just have time to maybe make one more video before the end of the year, and I thought that this one is very appropriate for the season festivities and family gathering. And I was like, okay, let me get it out before I also like proper start enjoying my vacation. I really found the subject really interesting, and I hope that maybe it can also be beneficial to some of you, because I've also been going back home and I'm spending holidays with my family, and I've actually had a really important breakthrough with my mother that I hope one day I'll make like a proper video, but more around mother-daughter kind of wounds and healing that, and what that also means for us as daughters of mothers who are healing. But beyond that, I thought this one is just more in general, like what happens to us when we go back home and the things that get triggered within us, and maybe like ways that we can gracefully and compassionately and holistically navigate those spaces or those triggers. People always talk about it, like how hard going back for the seasons can be, but we don't always have this kind of like little tool care kit for those experiences. So I thought this video would be really appropriate for something like that. I have my notes here, and I have my drink here. Like, I hope this is not too inappropriate. I'm going to try to keep it like this because it has like women figures. I painted all over it, but then they turned out to be too vulgar. So I'm not sure how I feel about this cup. But I hope to get into more ceramics later on in the future. But for now, was just painting it and glazing it. I got this as a present experience from a friend, and I really appreciate presents like that where we get to do stuff. But yeah, so I'm drinking a barley drink that I got introduced to while I was living in Brazil, and I really liked it, and I found it in a health store here while I was trying to get more matcha, and I'm like, let me try this instead. And it's really good. I love it. I wrote a few notes, but it might be also a bit over everywhere. I hope you have your beverage of choice. So I will start off a bit with my own story. Like, I'm going to be home with my little family for the holidays. That means being in Denmark, and my little family is really small. Most of my family is spread around the world, but a lot of it is also still in Uganda. Hopefully next year I'll be there, but for this year it's just the bit of us. This is also a very important holiday because it's the first time we are all properly together without my late precious sister. So it's an important experience for all of us. Something also very important happened this build up to the holidays that I thought was very key in what I want to share with you guys. And it was like me and my mom, we also got to talk about a very important subject. I hope I can make a proper video just about that, like mother-daughter healing and working through like mother-daughter wounds and creating healthy relationship with your parents, particularly for me, it's my mom. I think growing up, it was really important for me. Like I said, my mom was my only stable parent my whole life. And she had me when she was also young. Like, I can't imagine if I was her age with all the kids I was in and in a very dysfunctional, abusive relationship. Like, I think there was a huge part of me seeing all of that and being empathetic to all of that that made me always excuse a lot of things, and because I could understand why they happened. But I also think that that was also a disadvantage to my healing, because I think, and I've talked about this before in codependency, that because I can always try my best to understand why somebody would do something or hurt me in a certain way, I think it makes it easier for me to work on the hurt because I intellectualize it. It also kind of takes me away from the pain. Yes, I understand that, but it still hurts, or it still has a huge effect on me, right? I go straight to, because I understand that, I'm gonna let that be, and I'm gonna work on how I move on from this, you know? So a lot of my healing now has been literally like being in those spaces and also recognizing that it doesn't matter what your young bred understood or what you as an adult understood, those things still had an effect on you, and they still had pain on you. And I think I sparsely, is that how you say it? Sparsely sounds more correct. I sparsely tried to address these things as I was growing with my mom, and sometimes it would hit like huge blocks. but it was as though I never felt like I could proper push through and say, this is all the ways that I feel hurt and let down and neglected as a child. And these are the effects that they've had on me. And this is the work I've had to do. And this is the healing I'm still doing because of that. Maybe I felt like she wouldn't understand, but also I felt like, well, she couldn't do any better. And because she couldn't do any better, I denied myself talking through that and giving it back to where it belonged. Because even though she couldn't do any better, the things that I did experience were still not okay. And I think for a long time that was hard in my head, because I felt like, well, if somebody can't do any better, you have to make that good enough or okay. Do you understand? Anyway, healing my mother wound also meant that a lot of the time when I'm out in the world traveling or living abroad, I don't face them the same way. A lot of people also say that the relationships they have with their parents or the people they grew up with improve when they move abroad. Some relationships get worse, but some get better because you're not constantly triggering each other. And also, even if you were to be on the phone and you feel triggered by your parents about something, then you have the whole day or whole week or however frequently you speak with your parents to like recover and get into this new routine, this new person you are, this new self-care experience, this new safe environment that you've managed to create for yourself, which means that eventually by the time you talk to them again, that is now gone. Whereas if you are in that space and you're constantly getting triggers, it's harder for you. And a lot of people, I think, also revert back to their childhood self when they go back home, because we know everybody's dynamics and everybody expects certain dynamics from everybody. So we're kind of all then stuck in the space of role playing without giving each other the opportunity to evolve or even welcoming the new people that we've become in the gaps of us being together. Sometimes that can be very misfortunate because people do evolve, people do grow, people do heal, and people do change. So that's one thing, at least I felt like was very important for me, that I learned a lot while in this period of me being home, which has been that, okay, I really have to solidify in my head that as I grow, heal, and change, my mom is also doing the same. My siblings are also doing the same. And I think with my siblings, I had that understanding because I've always had mostly healthy relationships with my siblings. As I always say, they were the most healthy things I had growing up. And they're also the things I used as my cornerstone when judging other relationships, how healthy they were. So when we go back home, there's also, I wrote down that there's also generational triggers that can be in ways of how people have handled conflicts in the past, and they continue to move through the world from that lens. Meaning that sometimes if we're not mindful and intentionally growing as people and healing, but we get stuck some way, and especially if we never leave the dynamics we grew up in, it's easier for you to be stuck in dysfunction because you don't know any better and you haven't experienced any better and you haven't been exposed to any better. So you might kind of like get this feeling that I don't even think it's a feeling, it's just your reality. And you can't imagine your reality being any different than what it already is. So I feel when we are being intentional about changing those generational things that we pass down to each other, I think that's also a very important thing to recognize, that we want to have healthy relationships with our parents. We want to have healthy relationships with our extended family, with our siblings. So in efforts to do that, that also means that we need to talk through and work through the ways that we harmed each other in the past and in the present. And to have that dialogue also requires a lot of maturity and a lot of growth and a lot of empathy. And the empathy is not even just only for the people that maybe are saying that you hurt them, but I think that empathy can also be there for yourself, because I believe that we do ourselves a disservice when we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow and become better people. If you have that ability to grow and heal and become a better person, it's not only beneficial to other people, but it's beneficial to yourself and your higher self and your truer self and the person you would have been if you didn't have to carry so much of the baggage you went through, even if it, as a perpetrator of hurt and trauma. So I feel like the empathy is not even just for the people who are victimized by that, but it's also for you as a person, because you deserve to heal and you deserve to grow and you deserve to feel that you're a person that takes accountability, that you're a person that is willing to evolve, that you're a person that is capable of change, right? So sometimes we forget that when we're in the black and white of the good and bad, without recognizing that everything is everything and everything works for each other. The way you treat others is also good or bad. It's harmful to you or it's beneficial to you. It's nurturing to you or depleting to you. It's a cycle. It's interconnected. It's everything. I think also the thing that makes it very triggering when we go back, as I said before, you are receding back to your old self. Sometimes you forget that no. I'm this May. I'm the May that is able to stand up for myself. I'm the May that is able to take care of myself. I'm the May that is more aware of the things in other people that might trigger me, but I'm also aware enough to know that I can hold a gentle space for that without reacting. I'm also the May that appreciates healthy relationships. I'm the May that appreciates compassionate relationships, authentic relationships, and I'm willing to show up in that way. And I'm also not my younger self anymore. I'm the person who has created a safe and beautiful place for her that she can retreat and let me actually become an adult, right? Because that's another thing that I think we need to talk more about, the fact that when we don't heal certain parts of ourselves, certain parts of what hurt us or traumatized us as kids, it's almost like we don't evolve past that. We grow as people, we look more and more like adults, but there's elements of us that are navigated or controlled by that younger self because we haven't evolved. Yeah, we haven't brought justice to that pain and the bad things that happened to us. So it's like we are a prisoner of our past, right? So I feel like that's also something that when I am trying to be mindful in which space I want to respond from, I also try to remind that to myself that you are the adult May and you are here to show up in the way that you might have needed as younger May, but you're not doing it from a place of attack or defense, but from authority, in understanding that I know better and I can give myself better and also expect better from the people in my life. And that can be very challenging because as you grow and heal, if other people are not doing the same things or in the same space, because we all heal in different levels, on different timelines, you showing up as a different you can also be triggering for them because they're like, this is not the May I know, or this is not the whatever your name is I know. And so people are in conflict with that new self, right? And so there is that friction that happens when you're trying to get to know, reconcile like the old you with the new you, with old people who might not have changed, and trying to build a new relationship from that standing rather than trying to regress back into how you used to be or who you used to be. And sometimes we find it easier to just be our older self because it creates the least amount of conflict because we're like, I'm only here for a holiday, I'm going to go back home to my normal life, right? But that can also be re-traumatizing because you're literally then putting yourself back into that space, whether you felt disempowered, whether you felt silenced, whether you felt neglected, or whether you felt pushed to the side, or you felt overburdened by your family and what they expected from you, or shamed. When you go back and just say, let me just take it because I'm just going to be here for a while and go home, that's also a disservice to the person you've become and the growth you've made. But I also want to say that with as much sympathy as possible, that only you know your relationship with your family and your dynamic and what is the safest way to approach that. I'm just saying that there's different ways and different options and tools available to you, but you use them at your own discretion and what you feel is most appropriate in the space that you're in. And I think that's where I feel like, despite everything that was dysfunctional about my family, my little unit of a family, which is my mom and my sibling, I felt like we were all eager, even through the hurt and the pain. Like I was having this conversation with a friend and I was like, just knowing that and repeating that for myself, that regardless of everything that happened, I'm also happy to know that my mom never did anything to intentionally harm me or hurt me. I know that for a fact. I've never experienced that with her. But she did a lot of things out of unknowing or ignorance, because she was also growing and she read books, she watched TV shows. My mom was a big watcher of is still to this day Dr. Phil, Oprah, all those shows where people would bring cases and problems with their family. And one thing I always was fond of growing up is because we learned with each other how to be better, how to communicate better. And it wasn't always easy, but I love that we would watch that together. My mom would be like, when the show was done, she would stop it and then we would have a conversation. How do you guys feel about what happened? What would you do if this happened? Or how would you think that I would respond if this happened? It really was something, now that I've grown up, I really appreciate, because she didn't have that growing up at all. She was also learning new skills she hadn't seen anywhere or experienced anywhere, but she was like, I'm going to make an effort to learn. And because I recognize that my mom is also that person, and all of my family, my small family are like that. There is this openness to be better. We might get hurt and our egos might get bruised by bringing up things or saying that somebody hurt you, and so we're like everybody. And also, like, even me, like, if you come at me and you tell me I did something to hurt you, I'm gonna feel bad about that. I try not to go in defense, but I'm gonna feel bad about that, and I might like retreat a bit just to process that. But at the end of the day, I always know I'm gonna face that. I'm gonna take accountability. I'm gonna try my best to build something better from that with you, and also make sure that you know you're seen and you're precious and important to me. And because of that, I also want to do better so I can be there for you better. And that's the thing I learned from my family. Growing up in a space where it felt like everybody, even though they had imperfections, and we still do to some degree, but we were all willing to grow and be better and have better relationships with each other. I think especially once we no longer had our abusive father around, like, it became easier to say, okay, let's all figure out how better to have a family and a home and a safe space and everything. And we've always stayed true to that mission in all our different endeavors, you know. So coming back home, it was more that feeling that first it went really low, because I was like, specifically with my mom, my siblings and I were good, but like, it was really low because a lot of things came up and a lot of things were triggered by her actions and response. And I was like, oh my God, there's stuff that I never really let go of, even though I thought I have healed so much of it. And I was like, there's nothing to do but face this. But I didn't want to, because that wasn't my intention. Like, that wasn't my intention coming back. And I know soon I'll be gone anyway. But I remember, but I'm also not somebody to just let things slide if I know they're going to keep digging at me. And then eventually something happened that blew the lid off. And I just like, I was talking about everything. I'm like, yeah, this happened and everything. I was just releasing everything. And what clicked in my head was like, I needed to do that because I needed to return all the ways I had contoured myself to exist, caused by those experiences that made me feel uncared for, unimportant, not worthy of protection, not worthy of showing up for, not worthy of support. And on top of that, left alone to face my own trauma and healing process by myself, no support, no check-ins, which made me the person I am today. And it's the reason that I'm also able to hold sessions for people and help them through things like that. And the reason I love it so much, because I didn't have that, but still, that was not okay. I should have, just the fact that I had managed to not only survive that, but find ways to thrive despite that, and use that, alchemize that into something of worth for myself and for others, is beautiful. But I didn't deserve to go through that. And recognizing that difference, that I went through all of these things, but I didn't deserve that, you know? And nothing excuses that. That was never okay. And giving that all back to the part of it, at least, that was my mom, like all of it. It was so freeing, and it made me feel like I was reborn again. So sometimes when we go back home, that's also an opportunity we have if we meet people and are able to express things in a way that lets us feel like, I was carrying this and I didn't even know it, and now I can let it go because I've returned it to sender. And I was also lucky that my mom, which also shows her growth and her ability to keep healing and growing, was really good at holding space for that. eventually, like after I told her, you have to just listen. Don't explain. Don't excuse. I just need you to listen because I just need to give all this back because this is not something I should continue carrying. And I think a part of me was still dragging that stuff with me, even though I felt like I've grown. But that's why I also say that healing in my sessions, I would say healing is spiral, that you will go back to the same things in a different way with the different perspectives and different tools. And you'll be able to heal things gradually as you move through this spiral, whether you're going upward or downward, but everything is connected. And what you do here affects the higher level. What you do here affects your past. Everything is connected. It's not linear. It's not start and finish. It's not straight. My mom came back to me in a way that was very affirming and validating and just really made me feel seen. And not just me as adult me, but the younger me that felt like that pain and that unfairness and that trauma was never properly seen for the weight of it, you know? I feel like going back home and having the opportunity to revisit those wounds was very healing in my relationship with my mom. And for me, and I think also for her, we got to see each other differently because now I wasn't speaking to her as my younger self. I was actually speaking to her as an adult witnessing what happened to my younger self and knowing that I definitely deserve better than that. And when I was saying all of that, I didn't even care about what was to come from her. I was just like, literally, as I say, returning things. I'm like, this should have never been with me this long. Like, I shouldn't have had to carry this long. And I'm now choosing to return it and to let you know and to let you see me fully with the anger and rage I felt, you know, about that, the injustice I felt around that, in a way of like, it stops here, you know? I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. I'm not going to carry it with me beyond this. And what she brought back was beyond what I expected, but in a way that was so needed. Only she could respond in that way. And this is the beautiful thing because, like, soon when I leave, then that will be another less thing that I'll be carrying with me in the world. And that will be another way that I can exist lighter and softer and feel more empowered to use my voice and to be the woman I want to be and the woman that the seed I was as a child had the potential to be beyond all of these things. And also I was really grateful to myself and in a way just that feeling of I think reviewing everything and talking about everything, it also made me see how far I've come. And I also told her, don't think that I'm going around in the world being this person. This person only comes out the most when I'm here. And it's because there's stuff here. There are ghosts of the past, emotional ghosts of the past, still living here with us, between us, that I need to confront. And when I'm out the world, I'm okay. I'm okay because I'm in charge of me. I'm in charge of my environment. And I take really good care of myself. But when I come back home, I'm reminded why I needed that, why I needed to become that person who I am grateful for, but I'm reminded why those things are so precious to me. You know, why my peace of mind is so precious to me, why my calm environment is so precious to me. And I really appreciated what that has done for our relationship. And that would not have happened if I hadn't gone back home, or maybe it would not have happened in the way that it did. So sometimes going back home is an opportunity for us to also see how far we've come, how much we've healed, or even like how much certain parts of things still affect us, and perhaps how they're actually still controlling aspects of our life. It's a healthy check-in if we can be in those spaces mindfully and be authentic in the experiences of that pain or those things that were triggered. Again, if we feel that that's a safe space to do it. The thing that makes the holidays really hard for a lot of people is there is this expectation of what you're supposed to be, you know, what you're supposed to feel. But I could really welcome a world in which holidays were a time for us to check in, to be present with the new versions of ourselves that we've become while apart. As a community, be willing to project a different way of existing with one another, of the relationships we have and building them healthy and stronger. I know when I was religious, we never celebrated the religious part of Christmas. Actually, it's very blasphemous for us. But we always loved that because we would all be off from school anyway because the country we live in celebrates Christmas. So we just use that time to have family time and to be intentional about the family we were in and the people we were. And I think I'm seeing it more now that, okay, that is also a different way to build a healthier community and feel more grounded in your community if you see that everybody is dedicated to growing and healing and becoming healthier and creating a healthier and healthier dynamic. And I think this also goes to the other part that as a child, and I think for many people who maybe were the black sheep, the person who saw things, spoke things, and questioned things, I think if you were the black sheep in your family, you were the person who decided to expand what this family could be and could look like and could treat each other. And for me, even though like I wasn't a troublesome child, like I didn't get into a lot of trouble, I was always like good with school and everything. My way of surviving was just to create as little chaos around me as possible. And that showed up in the ways of trying to be as good of a child as I could. Not that I was like, I'm going to be a good kid, but more like the things I did because I didn't want more drama around in my life also led to me, of course, not getting in as much trouble, doing all right in school, all of that stuff. But I remember clearly a lot of the conversations with my mom, especially heated conversations where I needed to understand things because that's how I've always been as a child. And it's funny, when I was younger, my mom loved that part of me. When I grew older, it was very frustrating for her because I would ask questions like, why do we do that? Why does that make sense? Like, that doesn't make sense. And my mom would sometimes struggle explaining things because it was just what we did. It had no real actual reason. Or if she did explain something, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Or if she explained something, I'm like, that doesn't resonate at all. Like, that doesn't make sense why we should carry on doing that. So basically, I would hear the phrase a lot. Why can't you be more like your sister? And this was like my late sister. Her name, literally, her first name is Peace. And she was the peacemaker. She was the person who was just, it's okay. We just take things as they are and we keep everybody happy. And I wanted people to be happy, but not on a foundation that didn't feel truthful or authentic. I didn't like inauthenticity, even as a kid. I'm like, this doesn't feel real. And if something didn't feel real, I couldn't fake it. I've never been a good faker. And that also makes it harder in in families where certain things have to be a certain way and everybody has to pretend they're okay with it. So basically, I would stare the part in that way, not in the sense of wanting conflict, because I don't like conflict, but I'm not afraid of conflict. I think those are two different things. I never usually start shit, but I don't mind facing, even if my heart is beating, because I feel so uncomfortable when there's conflict and I feel, but I'm not afraid to keep going in it because I'm like, we need to talk about this. This has to make sense, especially if it is with people I care about. So being the black sheep of my family, I also was the person, because I was curious and I wanted things to make sense to me. Even leaving my religion was because of this character that I've always had as a child. I want things to make sense. And if something makes sense, I'm grounded in it. I'm good. Like, nothing can move me. Like, I'm... And in order for me to be moved from that space, I need something that makes just as more sense or even better sense. And until that happens, I'm good here, you know? So that also led to the fact that even though I was getting a lot of the backlash of my questioning and my doing things differently and wanting our family to be differently, it also meant that my siblings had a better upbringing or a better relationship with my mom because I was healing. I was willing to be the difficult child, you know, but then my mom would come around and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, you guys don't have to do that anymore. Or that, you know? So, and I feel like for a lot of black sheeps in the family, unless you just leave and never talk to your family, that is what they do. They question things. They make people face themselves in a different way. So this is also the most important, one of the important things about being like that, the ability to heal generational norms, unhealthy, destructive generational norms, not alone, but together. every time you go home, if you have a proactive family that genuinely cares about the people in it and they're willing to put in the work, you also end up with having a healthier and healthier relationship and family dynamic that you can grow up with instead of feeling that you've grown apart from. And that's what I feel with my family. And I think it's something I'm very fortunate to have because I don't take that for granted. I know that's not always the case. I think we're also lucky in the disadvantagement we have because we grew up just a small group of people that are all they have in some way. So we have to work together. We can't just survive together. We have to work together. We have to thrive together. I think this might have been different if we had stayed put in Uganda in my my mom's village and everybody was still around. There's a bigger norm net that is kind of like making sure everybody stays in line and kids are a certain way in the family and women are a certain way in the family. So I think it made it easier for us to break free of that because already our collective environment looked differently. So when we got back home, because we all went to boarding school at a certain age, so there was always that feeling of homecoming. Everybody would come back home to my mom's house during the holidays or what have you. And we all got to see new parts of each other. And we all got to revisit things that triggered us in different ways. And sometimes we would have little moments of conflicts or big moments of conflicts, but true to our love for each other, it always felt like we could work through that and be better people with each other and for each other. And there is that great encouragement that people do continue to grow and be better for themselves. And I love that about my family. I really do love that about my family. And it's the family that has also made me who I am, good or bad. So that's a beautiful thing, that getting to do that in community, that healing doesn't just have to be you on a lone quest, but recognizing something that I'm very passionate about, the balance between the community and the individual, that sometimes the individuals have to leave to come back differently and create something different, because sometimes that's hard if the community becomes bigger than the individuals and the survival of the community is prioritized over the health of the individuals, recognizing that the two are interconnected, right? You can have individuals without community, but community cannot exist without individuals. And therefore, the health and well-being of the individuals within those communities, whether it's family, whether it's romantic relationships, your friends, your country, your village, whatever, the individual's health has to also be prioritized because that's the only way you guarantee a healthy togetherness, right? So I think that's a different way we can look at healing as a community thing, and we get to experience that when we go back home sometimes. One thing I also thought would be really great to add would be being mindful about caring for yourself. If you're going back home for the holidays, if you are back home for the holidays, making sure that you make space for a before plan, a during plan, and an after plan of self-care could really make the difference. I often feel that when I go back home, especially when everybody's back home, it's really hard for me to have my self-care routines because we all like morph into this one way of being, you know, like me and my siblings love to watch reality shows mostly about love and couples. Like we like to watch things, we make food, we go for walks perhaps, we have conversations, we listen to music, we dance. That's usually the way we are together in holiday mood because nobody has to do anything. So we're kind of all okay with that being the norm, which means, and especially because the space my mom lives in is not particularly big, so everybody's always together, but it's cozy. I really love it. In a way, it reminds me of the few memories I have of growing up in Uganda. Just that feeling of space didn't matter as much because it was just everybody sleeping in the sitting room or in one room, and the coziness of togetherness. So when I go back home, it's also my time to really indulge in that togetherness. So things I might do by myself. Here I have my own space. So like I can do my workout in the morning, I can do my meditation, I can go for my walks in the park. Like I have a routine that is me-centered. But then when I become we-centered, it's like it's hard. Like, where am I going to do my yoga? Where am I going to, okay, never mind. Like, what time are we going to sleep? Because we're watching all these things until night. But it's also nice because it's kind of like gives you that space of indulging, like in every way possible, in being together, in not caring what time it is, in eating what you want to eat. Like, there's a space of just being, and to get to do that with people you love and people you don't always see, at least for me, because I'm not always here in Denmark with the rest of my family. That's also a nice feeling. But I think it's also lovely to go back home if you're in a space that is very triggering and very hard for you, that you have kind of a plan of what you're going to do for yourself to take care of yourself if you need that. Or even if you've been struggling outside of home and now you're coming back and you're like, how do I sustain that routine? Because it's also very important for me. So like, yeah, making like, I'm going to go for a walk. Does anybody want to join? Instead of, should we go for a walk? Because then if people say no, you're like, oh, okay, but we're not. You can say, I want to go for a walk. Does anybody want to join me? So then you still keep a certain amount of routine in your self-care journey. You eat well, you make something delicious for your family and you. Like, I like to cook for my family when I'm back home, like try out recipes, share new recipes I've explored while abroad or living apart from them. So there's certain things I try to do, but then there's also more lenience of just being as well. But I feel like this is also something that can be really nice if you need to be really aware, because it's a space that you feel that if I'm not mindful and I go in there prepared, I can just be from a place of reactiveness and I won't be able to enjoy it. So having a routine like, okay, I'm going to go back home. I usually like to go for a walk or run, whatever. I'm going to make these days for that. And then I can ask if other people are going to join. I will find a little corner at certain times of the day and have a little meditation. And maybe even your family would be curious about that. Like, what is that? What are you doing? So I think that just being intentional about it beforehand makes it easier than being like, when I'm home, I just go back to the person I used to be, but saying I bring back the person I've grown into and I share that person in the little nooks and spaces of being together with my family, right? And then there's also the opportunity, as I said, of aftercare. So that means when you leave, like being mindful of being a bit more heavy on the self-care, reflection, or processing practices you might have. So it could be like, okay, that was a lot. That was really big for me. Whatever happened, whatever people you met or situations that were brought up, okay, how do I make space for that? How do I process that? How do I, in my safe space, find a way to integrate that in a healthiest possible way? So that's also something that's possible if you feel like, okay, I'm just going to go in it, but then like after I'm going to have this self-care aftercare that I'm going to do for myself. Instead of just going back home, I imagine like dropping your bags and be like, oh my God, that was a lot. And I just need to recover from that, but I have no set plan for it. Does that make sense? It's just like letting those things marinate, and maybe even you find yourself ruminating over everything, but not really having a clear plan. Like, okay, that was a lot, that was triggering, that was overwhelming. Let me now use the tools I have gained in my safe space to process that, integrate them, and alchemize them to something better. Whether it's understanding myself better, holding better space for myself, understanding my family dynamic better, or the people, individuals that you had those experiences that you felt were overwhelming with. So I also wrote that some things that could be helpful, like during or even after, is if there's certain things in your family that get easily triggered. For example, let's say you have a feeling of not being seen or appreciated, or you feel rejected, or you feel like you are the scapegoat. I don't know, whatever you might feel in your family that makes you feel uncomfortable and loved. If we are in those spaces and we've created healthy affirmations for ourselves, that we can play over those feelings because they're going to show up more strongly in those environments. That can also be helpful, like saying that, okay, I always feel unloved and unseen. I quickly fall into that space when I'm with my family. Just being like, I love you. You are precious and you are wonderful and you matter a lot to a lot of people. Not maybe everybody shows you that, but you matter. Anything that can soothe that part in yourself. I see you, I validate you, you are important to me. Or being able to say to yourself, if you feel like people constantly using you as the scapegoat, they'll recognize what they need to see me as is more about them than about me. And I release the need to justify or defend myself or be in reaction to that, right? Because that also, again, is the practice of returning things to sender rather than being swallowed and trapped in this loop of you trying to prove that's not who you are, da da da, like I'm different, da da da, I don't do that, which is very tiring. Sometimes you gotta let people be with the stories they've created of yourself. And I also recognize that's another part of healing when you no longer need people to see you a certain way to be okay with yourself. It's so important because it also helps you exist more authentically for yourself, but just in general, because what other people interpret that existence or that experience of you as, you no longer feel codependent on that version, right? So that's important. So I feel like those are the things I really wanted to share, both from like my own experience, but also little routines for yourself. Like sometimes it's nice to go back home when you know like your buddy person is also there. That could be a cousin or a sibling or a certain parent. It might feel like it's a bit easier. I know that a lot of people struggle to go back home. And this is also the seasons where people struggle the most with mental health, and the season in which a lot of people also end their lives. And I think it's because our family wounds affect us so much as on a global scale, then there's space for in our everyday life to navigate or heal or process. And during these holidays, because the holidays are family oriented, a lot of people are triggered, even if they don't go back home, they're triggered at the fact that they maybe have no home to go back to. Maybe some people have cut certain people out of their lives in order to heal or move forward. And that can also be lonely if all your friends are going back home to their family, to their loved ones, and you don't have that. And that can feel very isolating. And so it's amplified during this time of year where everybody has somebody in somewhere, or the whole idea is the expectation that everybody has somebody to share this holiday with, or even that everybody celebrates this holiday. For a lot of people, these holidays were maybe the highlight of triggers and trauma for them. And when they come around every year, because we as a society are not mindful for those kinds of experiences during the happiest season of the year, it feels like it's invalidating, and it's causing more pain and hurt, but also it's isolating you in that pain because the overall society doesn't recognize that pain or that experience. So I think as my viewers, or whoever watches this video, that you know that you're not alone. Even in the most loneliest of spaces you might be, you're not the only one who feels like that. And even though that is a sad togetherness, it's a togetherness that lets you know that your human experience is not one that is only happened to you, and you have people, even if they're far away, even if you'll never meet them, that are trying to hold space for themselves and love themselves through this moment. And maybe you can draw from that energy and that awareness and that invisible but very present community that exists as well. And for people who do go back home to dysfunction, to pain, to triggers, I hope you also know that that's also an opportunity for you to go back in there, but be mindful of the fact that you have grown, you have evolved, and you have choice. Even if it's that choice is to exist in your family with less expectations, even if it is to exist in your family and change those things, or even if it is to cut off certain parts of your family or members because you no longer want to subjugate yourself to that kind of those kinds of experience or triggers or invalidations. Um, Everything you choose is valid for your experience, in the sense you have the right to do what's best for you and what nurtures your growth and your healing. And family is important. I personally don't think that family is more important than being healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. No. If your family is the reason that you cannot heal, that you are constantly living in a space of trauma or being triggered by that trauma, rather you be alone. I'm a big believer that you gotta, even in the last soul talk I talked about in relationships, Relationships, romantic relationships are important, but more important than your well-being. And you never sacrifice your well-being just to be in partnership with another person, because there are healthy people out there. There are healed people out there. There are black sheeps that escaped their toxic environments that they grew up in, seeking family, seeking community, seeking friendships, romantic partners. You can go and create something better, even if sadly that means you can't take the people that brought you into the world with you, or the people you grew up with you. You can still create something better, and you have the right to want that and make space for that. But that also, of course, includes the understanding and grieving of the fact that what you had or have is not something that you can grow with, you can heal with, and keep nurturing yourself with. That is painful. That is having to bury people while they're still alive. And that's not easy for anybody. So I know that choice is not an easy choice for a lot of people. Yet it's also another choice that we can make if we feel that people are not growing with us. Basically, that's all I wanted to share with you. This subject is so big and so vast, and it can go on forever. But I hope that whatever I did share, whatever you could see yourself in, and whatever that might be of benefit to you, that you use it and you make it beneficial in your life, and even the little tools or ideas about before, during, and aftercare, that it helps you go into that feeling a bit more armored and cared for and intentional in that space by yourself. And as always, if you ever need a holistic decolonial guide on your healing and self-care journey, I am always happy to be of service. I love what I do, and it's something that brings purpose to the pain and the healing that I have had to go through, and I love to guide and facilitate a space where others can also do that for themselves. So you can always read more about my sessions in my description box, or even on my channel. There's the option of booking a session, but of course you should read about it, read about me, and see if it's a good fit for you. Otherwise, I wish you the best of holiday season delights, and I hope that this holiday is kind to you, your mind, body, and soul. I send you lots of love, courage, and light healing. And I'll see you in the next year. Take good care. Bye, guys. Bye, guys. See you next year. Enjoy.